So okay, so we're gonna try and do this PowerPoint on a share. Sometimes they're a little finicky, but Arise is a nonprofit. I believe New Horizons is a nonprofit as well. We're also nonpartisan coalition, and we have over 150 congregations and community groups. Matter of fact, Arise was pretty much started by, I think, about 35 congregations here in Birmingham. And for a long time, Greater Birmingham Ministries was our fiduciary or our fiscal officer. They have been that for many groups in Birmingham. A lot of people don't know that, such as the Firehouse Shelter and ACIJ, just a lot of groups. They have put their credentials up to serve as a nonprofit backboard. But anyhow, we have about 2,000 individuals that promote state policies to improve the lives for Alabamians, especially working low-income and poor Alabamians. So a lot of our policies address those needs here in the state. The slides might be a little finicky because for some reason my mouse is. I think it's trying to get used to this shared screen. We have a vision statement, and I put it up there. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. It's not. So anyhow, this is a pretty generous vision statement where all people have resources and opportunities to reach their potential, to live happy, productive lives, and each successive generation is ensured a secure and healthy future. I like this next piece, where all government leaders are responsive, inclusive, and justice serving, and the people are engaged in the policy-making process, where all people live with concern for the common good and respect for the humanity of every person. That is our vision statement. So how does Arise work? Well, there are 3 activities that we promote. Someone is speaking. Okay. So we have policy analysis, and we have a great team of folks that do the studies of current state policies and legislative proposals that impact poverty here in the state, as well as working families. And then we have a statewide organizing piece that reaches out, which I'm an organizer for Arise. As I reach out to your group, I speak with other groups of people throughout the state. Actually, I'm supposed to be confined to Birmingham and Tuscaloosa, and somehow I have the Shoals as my area too. So I have quite a large area, and including Anniston. Got about Anniston, yeah. But anyhow, the organizers go out and they speak and hold groups and listen to people as well. We do listening sessions to find out what people want us to work on or would like for Arise to work on. And of course, then that brings in people like you, the citizen advocates who participate. We equip the members with fact sheets, with research, so that they can talk to their legislators about the issues. And so it's a three-pronged attack, if you will, as far as how we advocate. So each year, we have an annual membership meeting. And at the annual membership meeting, people, members get to vote on priorities that groups have submitted. Now, of course, this picture is not from last year's meeting since it was online because we were dealing with COVID. But I think this meeting picture goes back to 2018, I want to say. It might, yeah, 2018, maybe 2019, I don't know. No, 2018, because in 2020, 2019, we did virtual. So these were the issues that they came up with that were voted in. Adequate state budgets is always on one of our priorities, as well as tax reform. So what they actually voted on was criminal justice debt reform, death penalty reform, payday title lending reform, public transportation, and voting rights. I just put this up here because I was in a meeting. The session actually starts next week. It starts early, it generally starts in March. But because this is an election year for the legislators, they want to get a head start on being able to campaign. So they start the session early. It begins next week. Matter of fact, they've been having budget meetings this week. So I just put that up in case you're wondering about the session. It will be starting next week. And it might be that if you need to talk to your legislator, it probably be easier since we're in this COVID situation to reach them by phone here locally. So when we talk about adequate state budgets, there's certain items that fall up under that. One of the things we do is make sure that funding for certain programs are met. Education, of course, is one. Healthcare, of course. And to some regards, prison generally gets taken care of, but we want to make sure that funding for certain programs is not cut or a lack of funds appropriated. Also on tax reform, we have done, and you can go to our website, we have a tax booklet that breaks down how the tax system works here in Alabama. But one of the things that we're always concerned about is that the lowest rung or the poorest people in the state pay the most as far as their income in taxes. That's why I put this chart up here so you can see the way it breaks down. So that's the way it is right now in Alabama. Also, we tax groceries here in Alabama. We are 3 states fully tax groceries. And I put this map up here so you can see the other 3. Alabama, of course, Mississippi, and South Dakota. We have been working on trying to get rid of the 4% sales tax. The localities would have to deal with getting rid of that tax, and the way our local governments are set up, they are very dependent on sales tax. So that's a whole nother discussion. But it is possible that we could, as a state, get rid of the state portion of the tax on groceries. And I believe that figure, as far as what they collect, is around 400 million. And that goes to the education trust fund. So it would be necessary to replace that, because we don't want to take any money from education in the state of Alabama. You make sure I didn't go too far. Okay, so yeah. Other budget concerns. Raise the income tax threshold. Right now, it's $12,600 for a family of 4. We worked diligently for about 6 or 7 years to get the threshold raised to 12,600. It was 4,600, and the 4,600 came about in 1935 during the Depression. The governor put it into play. And of course, the New York Times, everybody was saying, wow, Alabama is very progressive. Because a $4,600 threshold, we only had 7,000 families in the state of Alabama that made that much. And so it was a very progressive income tax threshold. The problem is we never did raise it until we started advocating to raise the threshold, because we had people at the firehouse shelter and homeless people that worked day jobs or day labor paying taxes. So state taxes. So anyhow, the threshold is 12,600. How this compared to other southern states, we're still very low. I think Mississippi's up around 16,000. South Carolina's around 32,000. So we're still way behind. But that's one of the budget concerns that we have. We should create or increase individual and child deductions or credits. We should expand Medicaid. As you've probably been hearing on the news, that we did not expand Medicaid when the Affordable Care Act went into play. Had we expanded Medicaid then, it wouldn't have cost us anything to insure or cover at least 240,000 low-income workers. The gap in Medicaid right now for those people, because they make more than $320 a month for a family of 3, they don't qualify for Medicaid. I know it's a low threshold. We also need to make the criminal justice system more just and humane. And we're going to dive off into these now. The Cover Alabama is something we set up to deal with the Medicaid expansion. And you can go to that website. It's called Cover Alabama. If you just put in coveralabama.org, it's a great website. It has stories. It talks about what it would mean to these workers and to these families. So we have some live testimonies from people on the site, as well as a great collection of resources. I don't know if the paper that UA did, but there's been some real good financial or economic analysis done on the expansion of Medicaid. Both UA, University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and here in Birmingham, UAB, came up with that had we expanded Medicaid, it would have brought in about $30 billion. Keep in mind, a lot of the hospitals in the rural areas that are closing, they're closing because we did not expand Medicaid. They don't have the funding. This is really critical. And so we're hoping that in the near future, if not this year, maybe next year, that the state will expand Medicaid. 13 of the southern states did not expand Medicaid. They all wanted to support, I guess, whatever the political will about, the ACA. Some people call it Obamacare, but anyhow, it has helped a lot of people, and it's helping people right now. So, criminal justice debt, court debt adds up. It makes it hard to pay for basic needs, food, rent, and also it may keep people from voting. So there's a lot to this. We have a system that keeps a foot on the neck of people who have been incarcerated. And of course, most folks would not know because they don't have any relatives or kinfolk that have been incarcerated. So they don't get to hear the stories of these people and the hardships that they go through. But it's bad enough if you've been locked up for many years to come out with nothing and then have court debts put on you. It's really tough. So, and then some folks that get misdemeanors, or one lady in Montevallo, she was a nurse, and her tail light was out. Well, she was stopped again about the tail light, and had to go to court, and the judge sent her to jail for a week because she hadn't paid the fine, nor had she got the light fixed. So I don't know what's the purpose in that. You got somebody that's working, and now you are taking away their livelihood, and she had children. So there's a lot to be said, and I'm not going to play the God on this. This is something that we as citizens of Alabama really need to look at. When we talk about criminal justice reform, there's a lot to be said about the way we deal with people who we lock up in Alabama. How are they coming back to us from prison? You know, now I know that some of the programs, training programs, help them with jobs and that kind of thing and skills, but still, even to say rehabilitate, what are you rehabilitating a person that really had little self-worth in the beginning, and their value system was a little shot, and what are you rehabilitating them back to? You know, so even the word rehabilitation needs to be redefined, restructured. So we got a lot of work to do as a society and as a state, if in fact we want to do something that is more just with criminal justice, period. I'll get off my soapbox on that. All right, payday lending reform. This is, in case you don't know, it's a payday loan rate is 456%. Okay. And when you always see these commercials, I got my title loan back, those title loans are 300%. Now, if you are a active military person, they can only charge you 35%, which I think still is very, very high. I mean, if I had a savings account with regions that paid me 35%, I'd be jumping up and down. But the rates that they charge you in this state, 456% and 300% on the title loan. And what happens is a lot of these people get caught up in that first box up here. And this is Dan, this is a quote from Dan Feehan, I guess, Cash America. The theory in the business is you gotta get the customer in and work to turn him into a repetitive customer. That's really where the profitability is. So they want a repeat borrower, and it's better if that borrower come in and say, I can't pay off this loan in full, because that's the only way you can pay it off is in full. You can't go in there with $100 on a $500 payday loan and think that you can pay it off. You can't. Only thing you can do is pay on the interest or take out another loan. So that's the deal on that. So what it does, it gets a person in that loop. All right. One of the things that we have done is come up with a registry for the payday loan industry. And that's to stop, really as a stop measure on folks going back and taking out loans from other loan agencies and having 5 or 6 loans that they're running on payday to pay interest on. Now, we're also talking about doing that with the title loan, is to have a registry. However, the payday loan is the real big bugaboo here in Alabama at 456%. We've tried for a long time, and we're still, the members still want to see that happen, is get the interest rate down. We've tried even trying to cut the time that they have to pay back I guess would be the interest, which is now 2 weeks to 30 days. That would cut, theoretically would cut the interest rate in half. So there's all kind of ways that we have tried to deal with this through legislation and bills, but the payday industry has fought us pretty diligently on trying to reform. The death penalty reform. Well, we did make some strides on this. There was a provision that judges could override a jury. So if, say, 12 of us said, you know, the case is kind of weak on this guy. I don't feel like giving him the death penalty. Let's give him life. And we go back in and the judge would override us and give that person the death penalty. Well, we were able to get that reform so that the judge could not override the jury. The problem is that it wasn't retroactive. And so we still have about 35 people on death row that have been grandfathered into that old way of doing business. We'd like to see that taken care of, because a lot of those cases, as you probably well know, because you see on television, we're constantly letting people out that the case was not a good case. They were innocent people and spent many years, I mean, 30, 40 years on death row or in prison. So we shouldn't rush to judgment, especially if the jury says, I don't believe we need to put this person to death. There's too many loose ends. So this is something that we're still working on. And it'd be good to get rid of the death penalty. I don't know, it just, it's just a sketchy thing to play God. Here we go. All right, public transportation. We were able to get a fund set up that ADECA now has to fund public transportation. The problem here in Alabama is that we have a 1952 constitutional amendment that forbids Department of Transportation to allocate any funding to public transportation. So what that does, whenever you see a bridge or a road, there's always, that's being built with federal funds, there's always money tied to it where the state could allocate or bring down federal money for public transportation, but they have to match it, maybe 10% or whatever, you know. So with this 1952 amendment, Department of Transportation has said, well, we're not going to fund any public transportation, and they don't. So what we came up with was a way to set up a fund. It was, you know, through the legislature that is now being administered by ADECA. The problem is no money has been put into that fund. So we need to get some money put into that fund. And we'll be working real hard this year to see if we can get some money put in. Maybe a portion from the general fund, as well as some of the art money that has come in to help with some funding there. But I must say the 1952 amendment had nothing to do with Rosa Parks, as you know. she was on the bus in 1955. So I want to say that it had nothing to do with race. It had to do with they didn't want any funds being siphoned off from building roads. Voting rights, a big deal. You probably heard the president talking about voting, streamlined voting for disenfranchised Alabamians. We're working, or will work to remove barriers, as well as restore rights for people who have been incarcerated. We work on that. Because in the state of Alabama, you have to get your rights to vote after you serve time restored, and that's a process. So we've been working to help in that, as well as looking at how people register to vote, making it easier for, especially in the rural areas, for people to vote. So that is an issue that the members really are strongly about, and they call it a human right. It is. Voting is a human right. So if you'd unmute, if you'd unmute, if you have questions, comments, I'll take those now.
From a practical standpoint, if you succeed in funding a lot of these things better than they are now, where's the money going to come from? And if you go to the legislature and say, we want this, this, and this, do you also say, and we think you can finance it by doing that, that, and that?
Yeah, we generally do have a plan for the funding. However, the general fund this year is up about 11%, which is quite a bit. Also, we received billions of dollars in the relief funds. You know, they've already said that they want to spend 400 million or whatever it was, billion for prisons. So it's not that they don't have the money. What is it, William? Yeah, it's not that they don't have the money. It's that it might not be a priority. But they have money. They find money, and they, you know, I've always found that they can find money for just about anything.
Stan, I just want to say, I'm very much in support of your positions. I do feel like things have been quite unfair socially, economically, in so many ways. And the way that political power is structured, I regret that. I don't know when this will be overcome or how it'll be overcome.
Right. Yeah, it's something we have to really. It takes a lot to do this work. When I'm as far as staying power, because you have to talk with your legislators and get our members, people like you, to talk to their legislators. Because you're the one that voted them in and say that this would make Alabama a better place. You know, when we look at the news and we see all these killings, a lot of that has to do with poverty and people not understanding a lot of things and not having a lot of things. So there is some responsibility for the whole society when we look at our Alabama, when we look at what's going on, that especially some of the bad things. I was just on a call and I was listening that the postpartum rate for Alabama is really, really bad, especially among Black women. They die. They're dying 3 times more so than whites after they delivered or had a baby or whatever. And we would like to see, especially since we're one of those states that really want to push abortion, doing away with abortion, that we protect these women that have these babies, especially poor women, by extending the Medicaid coverage that they get. Right now, they only get 2 months after they had the baby. And we think it should be at least maybe a year. Anything longer than just 2 months, because they're still recovering. So it's one thing to say you're right to life, and another thing to say we don't care about the mother after she done delivered the baby. So it's those kind of little things that we look at and that we are fighting for. And hopefully, since it only costs $8.5 million to do this, put it in the Medicaid budget, we think that it would be a great thing to happen. And that's, let me say this, Medicaid covers a lot of people. People in nursing homes, a lot of seniors. As you know, you might know, or have some folks that have had to divest their assets in order to be covered by Medicaid, you know? So Medicaid covers a lot of folks here in Alabama, a lot of seniors. Any other questions?
Dan,
Yeah, Dottie.
how much does the state have to say about the Medicaid allotments versus the federal government?
Well, see, here's the deal, Donnie. The state has to say that we're going to cover X amount of people,
Right.
and then they have to do a match. Right now, the match is about 72%. So for every federal dollar of Medicaid, we pay about $3.
For every federal dollar we get, the state has to put in about 3?
No.
No.
Let me say it another way. For every $7, we put in about 3, I think.
Okay.
It's about
Yeah.
72% federal, and the rest is for the state to pay.
But you mentioned that you'd like to expand the time that a new mother has
Right.
benefits. Now, can the state do that, or is that the federal allotment?
No, the state can do it.
Okay. Once
Yeah,
they
they can
have
do
it,
it.
I mean, I know the state
Yeah,
can
but-
control whether we.
Yeah, they can do it, but they got to, come up with the 8 point whatever million, 8.5 million, I believe is the figure I heard. Yeah.
What are you optimistic that in a couple of years we may be able to expand, join in the
rest of
ACA
the-
Act? Yeah.
Well, yes, I think a lot of legislators want to do it, but sometimes politics gets in the way. They don't want to look a certain way. That's just being honest, You know, it's hard to say.
The southern
just like-
states have been totally recalcitrant about
Some of
coming
them
up with the
around.
matching funds. They've just been totally opposed to it. And at one point, as I recall, there was a program where the feds offered, it was just a 10% match. In other words, the states had to come up with 10% and they provide the other 90%.
We didn't buy in,
I
though.
was living in Texas at the time, and Texas refused to do it, and so did most of the other southern states that
That's
are
right.
still not doing it. Basically, you know, they do not want to spend any more money for poor people, particularly if a significant percentage are Hispanic and Black. And that's just a fact. That's the continued influence, in my opinion, of the you know, bigotry that and systemic racism that exists in our country today.
And you know, Nick, in Alabama, we actually have percentage-wise more whites on Medicaid.
Well, but once again, you know,
I mean, I know it's a perception. It's
the
perception.
people who believe what they believe aren't interested
know.
in facts. We
I
know
know.
that.
That's-
Facts don't
Yeah,
matter.
yeah, it's the perception. You're right. I'm not. I'm agreeing with you.
I know. I know.
Yeah. But they can be looking at the facts and still oppose any kind of change. And so
Stan,
yeah.
My question is this: you're quite informed about many of the different issues and things affecting your community, and so my question is how broadly is this type of knowledge throughout your community? Do your neighbors know it? Do your church members know it? I mean, who really understands all these things, and how to what degree?
Well, I'm always surprised when I go into a congregation or I've met a community organization that there's always 2 or 3 people that understand and read. I guess the internet now, since we don't really get a physical paper, but we have some great writers here in Birmingham, for instance, that cover like Medicaid expansion, that cover criminal justice reform. And so a lot of this is just common knowledge. Matter of fact, Kyle, I think it was Kyle Whitmire, did a piece on public transportation, you know, and about how the highway department would not even honor the check that Senator Shelby brought into Alabama to study light rail on 280. You know, I think it was a couple $1 million. I mean, a couple $100 million. And he had to take that check back to Washington. So a lot of
because
it
it had a state, did it have a state contribution
Match.
to it? A match, because of the match.
10%. Yeah. Light rail would be great down to 280, you know. But there are people in the inner city that said that having a bus that would run on Sunday so I can get the Cracker Barrel out there at the mall or wherever they're working would be great too, you know. Yeah. I seen a lady, I was at Taziki's at the Colonnade having lunch with an old friend, Peter Horn. and he's deceased now. But and I noticed because we're sitting outside that this black woman was standing out there, once we got our meal by about 11 o'clock or so. And when I finished my meal, which was about 12, she was still standing out there at the bus stop. So I walked up there and said, ma'am, do you need a ride? She said, yeah, I do. I'm waiting on the bus, but it hasn't come. And I have a parent meeting at my son's school. And so my employer let me off early so I could go to this parent meeting. So even when we talk about not just critical, super critical things, but that is critical to me, meeting with, I don't know if the kid was acting out or if it was whatever, but anyhow, it's just so many things people have to endure that depend on the bus system that they can't get to. I was in another meeting over at Urban Ministries, and this woman said she had lost 2 jobs, and she worked like at McDonald's and those kind of places because the buses wouldn't be on time, they would break down, and whoop-de-whoop. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough. And we're talking about Birmingham. I was listening at NPR the other day, and in Albuquerque, they're talking about free bus rides. In other words, a fee of no fees to ride the bus because they want to encourage people to ride the bus. And here it's like a struggle for people to ride the bus. We don't even want to talk about what's happening in Wilcox County. I mean, they don't have a bus system. Those people that have to get to Butler to see a doctor or wherever, it's terrible. Same thing, the people that's out in the southern counties adjacent to Tuscaloosa that have to come in for health care. It's tough if they don't have a car.
Are there any other questions?
Wanted to ask about the payday lending thing. Several years ago, maybe 3 or 4, my church had worked very actively trying to get that amount of that ridiculous 400+% reduced. And I thought that finally they had gotten the legislature to agree to reduce that. It's still crazy, but I thought they had done that. Has that gone back up again now? Or?
No, it never did go down.
Oh.
What happened is that those bills might pass the Senate, in the Senate, and go to the House, and they'll kill it. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, okay, Charlie, let's put this bill over your committee. You guys get it out so that we can get them people off our backs. But anyhow, no. And that's the way it works. A lot of times, I mean, the payday lending industry is putting money in these people's campaigns, big money. I mean, we don't even buy them lunch. Alabama right can't buy them lunch. So here they're getting a check for $5,000, Yeah.
That particular bill, I know, got to committee. The committee finally, all the members of the committee, except the chairman, decided that they would put it out for the legislature to vote on. And he killed it by, first of all, not passing it, not letting it go through. When he finally did let it go through, it was on the last day of the legislative session. The session then went into, and it was on the agenda, the session then went past midnight. 10 minutes after midnight, they issued a new agenda and the bill wasn't on the agenda anymore.
Right. let me say that's a common tactic too, because most legislators would vote for the bill. If it could get out of committee and get on the floor for a real vote, I must say most of our legislators, majority, do not agree with the 456%. Yeah. So I want to say that, but for those who are being supported, or even may have relatives that own payday lending businesses, you know, it's yeah, you never know what's in a man's heart or mind, why they vote the way they vote.
Well, it's a good thing there's at least one organization that will tackle some of these things and try their best to make some progress.
There is one church, it's Grace. I guess it's Episcopal or Presbyterian. I always get it mixed up, but it's in Tuscaloosa. They have actually started their own bank along with the Catholic Church and some other churches. They put in about $50,000. My understanding is that they are making loans to people, interest-free, and so far it's been a great success. People are paying them back, sort of like what they do in India with those small business loans, and it's working. So I mean, you know, you just won't believe the kind of interest that has been in this. The people up at Redstone Credit Union, they would like to offer loans to people, you know. So it's just a lot of people that are really concerned about this 456%. And I think that we're going to eventually make some headway on it, but we have to keep at it. That's just the way it is in Alabama. You got to keep at it. You know, like I said, it took us 6 years to get the threshold changed from 4,600 to 12,600.
How long has Alabama Rise been working on been in existence?
I want to say that it started about 89. Yeah. And for a long time, like I said, we were up under Greater Birmingham Ministries they were our fiduciary. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it may be a better tactic on the payday loans to try to find people to fund competition for the outrageous interest rates and to lend money as you point out the church is doing, to lend it at a reasonable rate and allow people to make payments to pay it back, as opposed to doing what the payday loan industry does. Actually, if people stop going to them to borrow the money, they will cease doing what they're doing. You know, they'll have to.
Nick, you're right, because they say that they will go out of business if we lowered the rate to say 200%.
Well, that's great. Let them go out of business. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. That'd be better.
Yeah.
The people would be better off if they can't borrow the money, I think.
Yeah, 200% is a lot of money. You know, I've heard that you mentioned Texas, that in Texas, a lot of the churches are doing just that. And I think that's why this church in Tuscaloosa is trying this program now, you know.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, but it just makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys might want to keep an eye on this this funding of the prisons with the COVID money. That's been real interesting too.
Is that legal?
Well, the Treasury Department put out something that said that it was legal, but then we don't know. I think it's going to be challenged.
What about the banks? They don't want to lend money at their normal rates to these people. That's why the payday lending institutions exist.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of these people are as far as their credit scores or whatever banks look at, wouldn't, I mean, they just can't get in the door, you know? So, you know, are they working on a job that is here and there? Maybe, you know, minimum wage at best. So it's tough to go into a bank. That's why I thought it was good when I heard the guy from Redstone Arsenal Credit Union say that they would be interested in taking this on. I haven't heard anything else from them, but it wasn't just Redstone. It was, I guess, that association of the credit unions. It could prove to be lucrative for them.
Yeah, I got a general question about these COVID funds that have gone to Alabama. I keep reading articles that a lot of that money has not been distributed. I have no idea how it's actually distributed. Does the state distribute it directly to the school districts, or does it have to go through the legislature? And are you involved in that at all as far as getting that money to the people?
I think that we do have some people in Montgomery that are looking at that and making sure that the guidelines are being met. But my understanding is that even Birmingham City has money, say like for people who fell back on their rent and so forth. They have the ability to issue payments and so forth. But like you said, a lot of it is in the pipeline and it's tied up, you know, are just not moving.
Does the state get to keep that money, or I think I read one
No,
page.
they got to spend it. They got to spend it, and they got to be able to validate it. If I tell you, Bob, I'm giving you $100 to help feed 10 people, I want to see a list of the people, at least, and how you distribute it.
Okay. But I think I read somewhere where the ESSER funds 2 or something, the second release, only 4% of that money has been obligated so far.
That's right. You're right. They have had whatever issues getting that money out the door.
Yeah.
There might be even a special session on that.
Okay.
You just keep your ear to the ground. It might be a special session on how to better facilitate the movement of that money. Jesse, you had a question?
No, my wife is involved with Bridge Ministries. Stan, you hit it on the head. They are involved with trying to distribute some $500,000 of the city money, I believe. It may be county money. And it is very difficult. You've got to meet all the restrictions. And another big problem is, you know, if I walk up to you today and say, here's $100 million and you've got to spend it, and I want to make sure that you spend it correctly. So you've got to set up all the administrative part of this, and you're not set up to spend $100 million and you've got to distribute it. It's awfully difficult. It's proving difficult for these organizations to overnight become major money distributors and still adhere to all the rules of who can get the money and who can't, because there's some very strict guidelines.
Right. That is a problem. I mean, just think about it. You know, they had been begging for $1. you get hundreds of millions. You know, how do you get you know? And then all these applications, you got to make sure that you're not being hoodwinked. You know, that's the other problem. Yeah. Yeah, it's major. Well, any other questions? It's now 11.
We thank you very much. I think we've all learned a little bit, and we're glad that your organization is doing what it's doing, and that you told us about it.
Okay.
You can tell by the questions we were
Yeah,
appreciative.
yeah, yes, good questions, good questions.
Without you bringing it up, I'll say my envelope and my check to Arise will be in the mail in a week.
All right, Jesse. Thank you. Happy New Year to all of you guys.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.